Well, if ever there was some great example of worldwide travellers, adventurous worldwide travellers, it would be two people I'm very delighted to have with me, and that's Jacque and Mark Hagan. So, look, thanks for offering to share your tips with people who are looking to travel a bit more independently. So, I wonder whether you could just tell us a bit about briefly about your past travel experiences.
Well, Jacqueline's talks much more than me, so I can let her unload all this information to you.
Well, we've been doing all sorts of independent travel for years and years and years. We started back in 1974 when we were really very young and just out of university, and we did the overland trip from Australia to Europe, which was known as the Hippie Trail in those days. And it was quite an interesting experience because you were supposed to actually spend the money with the down payment on a house, but we didn't do that. We just went off. And we were actually doing this at the same time as Tony and Maureen Wheeler were doing it, and they, of course, wrote it all up and created Lonely Planet. But this kind of travel really gets into your blood and your bones and everything, and you just couldn't even begin to imagine ever going on a guided tour or on a cruise or anything like that, because the absolute excitement when you get off the aeroplane and you think, wow, we're here, and we've got to find the bus from the airport to wherever we're going, and then we've just got to figure out what each day's going to be, and it's just truly exciting.
Obviously, you've been travelling since your younger days, quite adventurous travelling. What would be your advice to single people or couples who are looking just to get away from the cruises and the organised tours, just for that little bit more, the adventurous experience that you just explained?
I think the first thing to do is to choose a country that you're really excited about, or a region that you're really excited about, and do plenty of research. Do lots of reading about the history, lots of reading about the current situation there, the culture. If you can learn to say hello and goodbye and please and thank you, that always makes a huge difference. And leave most of your luggage behind. We never travel with is absolute extreme case of multiple destinations where we'll go to 10 kilos, it's much more like 7. It's a lot easier if you go to one weather zone, because then you've got the same kind of clothes. The other thing I think that's really important is I get really culturally confused. So we tend to go to a country or to 2 or 3 countries in the same kind of region, because then you can get your head around the particular culture and the particular history of a place. And we always take public transport because that allows us to be with the people rather than observe them from inside a rent car.
So, I understand, Mark, you have a particular interest in history. You'll study up on the history, whereas Jacque, you'll do the culture.
Yes, I think having the history is just so essential when you go to these other countries, because you can understand a lot more about the people and a lot about the circumstance. So when you actually do see the architecture or the geography of a place, you can understand it in a historical context. So it gives you a lot more information about the whole place. I mean, we're just on the Danube, kayaking up and down the Danube a couple of weeks ago, and just going down that magnificent waterway and just seeing Serbia on your right, Romania on the left, and just the incredible history of just crossing. It was called the Iron Gates. It's in Romania. And just having the history of the Iron Gates, and it was a famous bridge that Trajan had actually built, the Roman emperor, and 102 to 104 actually built the bridge across this. So you actually know the whole history of this place, the last 2,000 years, and you can put everything in context when you see it. So it's just terrific. Yeah, so knowing about the place like that was just one example.
Yeah.
That was an example a couple of months ago. Yeah, so it's very important.
To what degree of adventurous would you call us? Would you call yourself risk takers, or is it more adventure or experience seeking?
I think more experience seeking than actually risk taking. Not climbing up mountains or abseiling down cliffs and stuff. Bit too old for that stuff. Probably did that a few years ago. But really, it's just adventure, seeing other places and meeting other people, and going to places out of the way, but doing nothing really out of the extraordinary that's dangerous or going down rapids or anything like that. We don't do that stuff anymore. It's just adventure travel. It's just funny getting to meet people and places in out of the way places, and when it's not dangerous, and you can do it by public transport, as Jacque said.
Yeah, I think the concept of risk is kind of a personal one, and the more experience you have, you're probably more inclined to take what would seem to other inexperienced people as risk. We always have our antenna up. We're very, very aware about where we are, but we don't allow that to interfere with our ability to interact with locals. We talk to as many people as we possibly can, and we welcome people's advances to us in the bus station or whatever. We don't automatically assume that they're trying to sell us something, steal something from us, or in any way cause us harm. We operate from the position that here is a person trying to be friendly and welcoming us to their country.
And I think the other thing, that we're talking to people like bus stations and stuff like that, they tell you it's places where, that's a lot more interesting than the place we thought we were going to go to. So let's go there. So at a bus station, instead of going to the place you were going to, these people tell you something, so you go somewhere different. That's the sort of risk-taking you're talking about. To say, be flexible and say, oh, gee, we won't do that, because it sounds a lot more interesting to go to this place than we didn't heard of until this person told us about it.
So it's very much taking local advice, I guess, from other travellers and locals.
Very much so.
I think it's also important not to have a fixed itinerary, because you don't know. We tend to have the flight in and the flight out, 6 or 7 weeks later, and keep ourselves open to whatever anyone suggests, so that if somebody says, hey, you're really close to such and such, you can just take this local bus and in half an hour you could be at this terrific place. Well, we'll throw a ticket away and go there. We take absolute opportunity of what we're learning.
Where's the greater values in terms of the sights you see, the mountains, the waterfalls, or was it the people you engage with?
I think it's all of the above. It's all the above. I usually go to historical places because I love them, like Roman history or all the other histories you go for. But you go to these places and you run into locals, and the locals will tell you something and say, look, up the river up here, there's a special place. There's a walkway here from the Danube a couple of months ago. There's a walkway that was built here about 150 years ago, now in totally disrepair, and the jungle's come over it. And so they tell you these places where you can actually go. You never see them on a tourist map.
Yeah.
But because you're there in the circumstances and you're meeting these people, they create all these other ideas for you to actually go ahead and use those ideas to go and explore places and do things.
Yeah.
It just...
I think it's really important to remember the locals know their town a lot better than any writer of a guidebook. In many cases, they know the good stuff to do, which the tourist office has never even heard of. And it's, I guess, making yourself available to listen to people and show an interest, so that you do have the opportunity to do something that's not actually in the guidebook.
You were saying before there was you had a couple go with you, and they were fair to say traditional travellers, if you like, and perhaps can you share what they experienced after they did your more form of independent travelling?
Yeah, well, the circumstances arose that some very, very good friends of ours needed to go on a holiday, and so we invited them to come with us. They were initially quite shocked at this, and they said, but we're not going to walk 25 k's a day, and we're not going to do this, and we're not going to do that. We said, well, no, you don't need to. We'll just meet up, and we'll be with you for 3 or 4 days, and then we'll go off, and it'll all be okay. But there's 2 things that you can't do. You cannot bring more than 10 kilos of luggage, and you're not allowed to rent a car. You've got to go on public transport. And if you can get your head around those 2 things, we'll guarantee you'll have a fantastic trip. And they did, and they never again will take more than 7 kilos of luggage, and they will never again go in any form of transport except on public transport.
Local bus.
It's really freeing. The husband made the comment about how stressful it was for him renting cars and looking for a place to park, and to just be able to sit in the bus and lie back and let somebody else do it for you. And of course, they had no idea about the richness of all the people that you have a cup of tea with when the bus stops for you all to go to the loo, and you all just chat to the locals.
Just an example of actually meeting locals. So we're in a town called Veliko Tarnovo in Bulgaria, and we went to visit this monastery. We got a bus out to this town, a beautiful monastery. The monastery had been burnt down 8 times by the Islamists who actually invaded the country and rebuilt. It was beautiful. Walk past this monastery for about 10 kilometres right through, absolutely no one, through the woods. Absolutely beautiful place. You can see other monasteries on the hills and nothing, just beautiful forests. And we walked past this place, and we hear rustle, and it was a bit more of an agricultural place. And there's these 2 guys rush out. There was a father and his son, and they had an orchard. And they couldn't speak any English at all. They came in there and invited us in. They gave us all the fruit from the thing. Just absolutely marvellous. This guy sitting around sort of with his 2 guys, middle of absolute shit creek. It was, and just these guys came out and said, from Australia, they said. Came down and said, these 2 guys, just your dad and they had this little plot of land. They're growing all the vegetables and they're giving us strawberries and peaches and stuff like this. And just out of the blue.
The next day we saw the younger man at the train station, and he was his daughter's school class excursion on the local train to the next village was all sort of happening, and they were saying farewell, and we were all going to that village as well. So off we went on the train with the girls from the village that were the daughters and her friends from our men in the orchard. So all of a sudden we were totally part of the local culture, going off on the school trip.
You just wouldn't get that on some sort of organised tour or cruise?
No, not at all, because you had to be walking from a monastery through the woods on a beautiful path on a magnificent day. We saw absolutely no one for the 10 kilometres we walked until we ran into these guys. Well, they ran into us. They invited us into their orchard. So it was a terrific experience.
So it's one of the examples too of really having an open itinerary. Just.
Oh yeah. Just because it's just one of these things that you just have an itinerary like that and just walking along. And then the beautiful monasteries and a magnificent place, the Bulgarian mountains. And just it was gorgeous.
Any final advice for people wanting to be a bit more adventurous in their travel?
I think do your homework and know a lot about the country that you're going to visit. Read the history, know the politics, know the kinds of things that people do for a job. Then just get out there and do it.
Well, thank you very much, Mark and Jackie, for your tips and advice, your examples of people who are really getting out there and an experience in the world, and so it's very much appreciate you sharing your advice. So
Good.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Good.
happy travels.
We'll see you there.
Buen
See you on the
viaje.
road.